As I watched the battle for the Dawn, the battle for Winterfell, one of the biggest questions I had at the end was what was Bran doing the whole time? Which is actually a question that I've had all season, and it took me a bit to realize it, even though the answers to both of those questions is probably tied together. So, note, we may never actually get an answer to this question, or Bran may start off the next episode explaining exactly what he was doing. I'm not really sure, but I'll expand on all my thoughts on other issues in a later video for what I think is going to happen in the future. But here, straight to the point. Here are the 2 points of logic that set up this idea for what he was doing. Bran, as a green seer or a three-eyed raven, has the ability to visit the past, but not exactly communicate directly. And it creates a time loop where he was always actually there the whole time, the first time. So the clearest show example of this is the Tower of Joy when he calls out to his father, but Ned only hears like a soft voice on the wind and he turns, but assumes it's nothing because nothing is there. Also in the books, it's made clear that the wind led to Jon finding the silent ghost in the first chapter of the first book. Before that wind making Jon look, they were about to leave Ghost, having gathered up all the other pups. So it's obvious that the old gods can go back in time and in some way communicate softly, and people can hear them, but usually don't really know what they're hearing. Then the other point, which isn't exactly needed, but it helps, is a theory that I like for what Bran has been doing with all of those creepy stare downs, and it's some sort of spiritual mind reading download thing from the Weirwood net. Basically, when he makes direct eye contact, he's able to read and see certain important things about a person and learn about them, and then he can go kind of back in the past later and look for certain things, perhaps, or whatever. He gains new information from actually being physically near a person. I think that's what those creepy stare downs are trying to establish. So, he's doing these creepy stare downs, and then he's often sitting in silence like he's elsewhere, but we know if he were in the past or warging, his eyes would have rolled back. So he was actually just sitting there. So, with that in mind, here's my theory for what he was doing. Bran, for most of the past few seasons, has been listening. He was listening for the old gods, which happened to be himself, speaking and giving instruction on the wind or however, in a weird way. Then in the godswood at the final battle, he was watching with his ravens and then getting near the Night King with those ravens and getting a read on him, getting a read on the battle as a whole, and traveling back in time, sending himself the messages that had set the dominoes up for everything to fall into place. Due to the weird time thing Bran has, he's been listening for his own instructions this whole time. All these past episodes, since the Night King has killed the three-eyed raven, the only thing Bran has had that has been from the future in any way, since we don't think he can actually go see the future, is his own instructions from the moment of truth, the moment of the battle. So that's all he could hear, and that's what he was listening for. This is why Bran is seemingly absent all battle long and not doing any fighting or massive warging that's influencing the battle. It's because he was now at the only point where he could actually see what he needed to happen, and he had to spend his time quickly going back to tell his past self anything necessary to make it happen at the moments he needed to know it to make it happen. That's why Bran was so sporadic with all of his advice and useful comments, and he was mostly just listening to himself, and he only had time to go back in time and warn himself at the right moments when it was absolutely crucial. He may have needed to get his ravens near the Night King while he was flying into battle to get a read on him and his plan, and then from there he would have the information that he needed to go back in time and inform himself, the only person who would know to listen for it, of what to do, including giving Arya the dagger that she would need to do the deed in the end. The ending has undeniable parallels to The Lord of the Rings, where the hero's actions all lead by fate to the destruction of the ring, essentially, it seems, by accident, at the exact moment required to save the heroes from certain death. Except for that it isn't fate. It is the will of the god of Middle-earth, Iluvatar. His will and subtle guidance through his instruments like Gandalf is what won the day in the end. It was a blessing by the gods to save humanity because In the end, even their best wasn't quite enough without God. In Game of Thrones, God, in this case, is the first point of view character of the first book. We watch Bran not only grow up, but grow into the God whose will guides the world of men through the long night, through Ragnarok and the end times to barely survive. That is what Bran was doing under the tree. All of the subtle guidance, every whisper on the wind, all of this while the brave living guarded him just long enough for humanity to be given its saving grace. And while Bran was the guiding force for the battle at Winterfell, we also have to give the other gods some credit. The Lord of Light was out there resurrecting people who were very important in the final battle, so it wasn't maybe all Bran, but I didn't want to get into the weeds too much. I wanted to keep this video on the point of what Bran was doing. If you want to hear my thoughts on what exactly all of this means for the rest of the series and other things, make sure to subscribe, and I will see you next time.